Well, I love Star Wars.
Liar!
But I think if I, zoomed out a little bit, I was excited about exploring family dynamics.
Are you serious?
I wanted to set it in the time period that we did 100 years before The Phantom Menace because, one, it won't step on any legacy characters. It won't step on any of the canon. If you know what a Jedi is, you'll probably enjoy the show. It was, there's a certain amount of world building. I mean, not the Star Wars-ness of it all, but
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
So, when series 2?
oh, soon, I hope.
I have a bad feeling about this.
There's also a lot of Star Wars lore that I haven't seen in live action that in order, I would be honored and over the moon if I could explore that in the second season.
Who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows it?
Welcome in, everyone. I'm the Disapproving Dad, and things are not looking good for the Star Wars universe. Star Wars used to be a brand associated with incredible storytelling, strong character arcs, stunning visuals, and wholesome content that engulfed the pop culture world, which enticed the masses from all different walks of life. Unfortunately, now Star Wars under Disney is only known for its horrific storytelling, cheap-looking CGI nightmares, and woke DEI beats that push the radical agenda of the now untalented and unqualified employees over at Lucasfilm. It's been a rough ride for fans, from the disastrous sequel trilogy to a slew of uninspired, horribly produced TV shows. Star Wars under Disney is no longer a wholesome brand families used to bend over backwards to support. From the massive box office turnouts and billions of dollars spent in merch, Kathleen Kennedy and her DEI hires across Lucasfilm have managed to turn an extremely profitable company with unlimited potential into one bleeding cash year after year. For many fans, The Acolyte was the final nail in the coffin for anyone holding on to hope that Disney would manage to turn things around. Even after the massive failure of The Acolyte, which managed to further divide an already frustrated fandom and simultaneously burn $180 million, Lucasfilm still has many projects in the works. Let's revisit the most recent creations for Star Wars under Disney and evaluate the state of where we are now and where we are going as Star Wars looks to the future as Lucasfilm plans to bring Star Wars back to the big screen. Let's get this over with. The Bad Batch wrapped up its third season in May of this year, and this is almost a compliment. It wasn't terrible. The Bad Batch was a good story for those enthralled with the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels animated series, but did little to improve engagement with more casual viewers who watched the movies and possibly the Mandalorian series. The plot moved from moments of maturity to include large-scale war scenes and dealing with prisoners of war, to more kid-oriented content with a more simple story arc as seen through the eyes of the clone Omega. There were moments of the show that were not perfect, such as breaking lore and alluding to projects that end up connecting the sequel trilogies to the Clone Wars arc. For all its flaws, I would argue this does little to harm the Star Wars universe when it comes to further content engagement, and would say that it is very appropriate for your kids. It even has a few positive messages of exemplifying family values and friendship.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
This is the opposite for The Acolyte, however. The Acolyte is still very fresh on our minds, as it is not only the worst Star Wars project created, but quite possibly the worst TV show ever produced under the banner of Disney. The fans hated it, with a Rotten Tomato fan rating of just 17%, juxtaposed to an 80% approval rating from the critics, who must have watched The Acolyte blindfolded and on mute to come to that conclusion. It was a colossal $180 million failure, and I won't rehash the details. Check out my prior videos where I broke down each episode, even if it almost killed me. The Acolyte managed to rise to number 6 on the top 10 most watched shows according to the Nielsen ratings, to then fall out completely by week 4 and stay out of the top 10 for the rest of its run.
Pathetic.
Many fans have already checked out, but families are starting to leave this franchise as well, as none of the messaging is even remotely appropriate for their kids anymore, compared to real George Lucas Star Wars. This show was a mess, but I am begging for a season 2. Let the roast continue. The Acolyte can be summed up with this.
I would say arguably the gayest Star Wars, I think, by a considerable margin. And
moving on to future projects. Skeleton Crew is set to release later this year. All we know so far is that it will showcase a character played by Jude Law, leading a band of children in the Star Wars universe, set in the Mandalorian timeline, featuring a familiar enemy from Mando Season 3. This show has been marketed towards a younger audience, but don't expect any rational adult to introduce this show to their kids after the last live-action show showcased angry lesbian space witches and gender identity rodents. It'll flop just like The Acolyte. Of all the Star Wars shows released so far, Andor, in my opinion, is by far the best. The writing is superior to any other live-action show, but it could use a few improvements. From a few poor set designs, handful of costumes and props that ruin the immersion of Star Wars, and a couple of annoying music scores, I hope with such a long break between Season 1 that released back in 2022 and the eventual release of Season 2 sometime in 2025, that the producers took the time to make some necessary changes. With 3 years in between and a colossal $250 million budget, this show has the potential to improve on Season 1 and deliver a true gritty, dark spy thriller the fans have been asking for years. Other than the more adult proposed lesbian relationship between two of the rebels that is at least more genuine and realistic than anything seen in The Acolyte, Andor so far ignores the woke beats introduced in other live-action shows. But hey, it's Disney. Don't be surprised if they choose to ruin Andor too. All this talk about shows is concerning on its own. Of the few successes Star Wars has had with TV show releases on Disney+, this was never the intention of this universe created by George Lucas. Star Wars is meant for the big screen. The Star Wars movie was a special moment created where parents could take their kids and they could feel the hype around them for months leading up to its release. The first 6 movies, and I argue The Force Awakens as well, could be included in this, were true cultural moments. The escapism of the story permeated pop culture even before the movies released. All the toys pushed in stores and TV ads were all Star Wars. Every sports event or major television event was a moment where people tuned in just to see the new Star Wars movie trailer released. Fast food and grocery stores were packed with promotions for Star Wars. Billboards, newspapers, commercials were all promoting these movies, and I remember getting to experience this as a kid myself. It was a bigger experience that truly felt as people from all walks of life were connected, even if it was just for an entertaining fictional movie. This has truly died off though, as many fans and families have checked out, and it has absolutely tarnished the brand name of Star Wars. Fans spoke out with their wallets when Solo released after the failure of The Last Jedi. It truly wasn't the greatest movie, but it was far better than what the box office showed, with a $213 million domestic box office return and a $393 million total budget against $275 million film. Lucasfilm CEO Kathleen Kennedy had experienced her first financial failure and learned all the wrong lessons. It has been 5 years since the last Star Wars movie released in a movie theater, and it will be a full 7 years as the next movie is set to be released in May of 2026, and that is The Mandalorian and Grogu. This will be directed by Jon Favreau and will just be The Mandalorian Season 4 made into one movie. Fans were extremely vocal about the absolute failure of Season 3 of The Mandalorian, sparking the change of direction for the project. I believe the frustration had something to do with this.
We fell in love.
We fell in love. We did fall in love.
Could I perhaps hold the baby?
The Mandalorian Season 3 was incredibly expensive at $120 million, probably due to the incredibly large, wide-frame lens the crew had to have custom-made to capture Lizzo in all of her shots. Everything was changed in the Mando universe to accommodate the normie craze of Baby Yoda, rendering Season 1 and 2 of the series moot, as they end up right back where these two characters left off from the very first episode. I am really not looking forward to this movie. Disney also announced an untitled movie set to be directed by James Mangold that is going to be set 25,000 years before the original trilogy. With Mangold's recent release of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which absolutely flopped at the box office, Disney would do well to cancel this project, but they won't. Get ready for something like this to appear in the world of Star Wars.
You end up like this.
Flaming, resourceful, daring, beautiful, self-sufficient!
An untitled Dave Filoni movie was also announced that is set to further Filoni's Ahsoka series and connect into the Mando universe on the big screen. Filoni has caused quite the rift recently with fans who once believed he held the key to reigniting the passion for storytelling in the Star Wars universe after personally working for George Lucas for years. His work on Clone Wars and Rebels captured the attention of many Star Wars fans from all ages, as his style of storytelling brought a sense of adventure mixed with interesting character arcs that felt genuine and interesting. The adaptation of the character Ahsoka into live action was poorly executed. This show was clunky, ruined the image of the beloved Grand Admiral Thrawn, and turned out to be a borefest riddled with plot holes. With Filoni's live-action movie, I unfortunately expect a lot of the same. Moving on to Charmin Obaid-Chinoy's announced Rey Skywalker movie. We have all seen the viral clips from her past.
It is important to be able to look into the eyes of a man and say, I am here, and recognize that. And recognize that I am working to bring something that makes you uncomfortable, and it should make you uncomfortable because you need to change your attitude. And it's only when you're uncomfortable, when you're shifty, when you have to have difficult conversations, that you will perhaps look at yourself in the mirror and not like the reflection.
Feminism.
This has no place in Star Wars. This has no place in any storytelling or any content for your kids. Girls watching Star Wars should not be taught to hate men, and men should not be taught to hate women. She is an activist documentary filmmaker, not a creative storyteller. It is what it is. Disney is taking an unqualified director and arming her with some of the worst content and boring characters they have ever created to date in a massive box office movie. The idea of creating entertainment for everyone that promotes escapism and personal reflection are lost ideas when it comes to Disney Star Wars. Who is the target audience? It sure is not lifelong fans or families with children. Right now, all the wrong people are involved in this universe. There are talented people out there, however, who want to tell good stories, but they are not the ones picked to lead Star Wars projects under Disney.
Then I came in for an audition, and that's when me being a Star Wars nerd helped, because there was a scene we were doing, and the character's supposed to start in the scene meditating, assembling his lightsaber with the Force, and he's meditating, and then he comes out of the meditation and has the scene. And I did the scene different every time, but the meditation, I always did it really tense. Just balled up and fists of fury and white knuckles. And after a while, the director's like, we've done this scene 4 times, and you've done it different. But the meditation, why are you playing it so tense? The meditation, you're so tense in the meditation. And I said, he doesn't know how to meditate. And the director's like, what? He's a Sith. He thinks this is how you do it. And you force the pieces together because it's this is.
Creators like Sam Witwer actually care about good storytelling and should be more involved in Star Wars projects. If Disney could get past all of their diversity, equity, and inclusion quotas, maybe they could turn things around. The state of things, unfortunately, are that Star Wars fans are fed up with what Disney has been putting out. A very small handful of fans are still here because they actually enjoy Disney Star Wars. Another portion of fans are still here because they are optimistic Star Wars can be turned around and be brought back to the cultural phenomenon they remember from before. And the rest are here to watch because they need to see with their own eyes the desecration of a beloved IP that has been turned into a boring woke vector for unintelligent employees of Lucasfilm to spread their terrible stories to the masses. Star Wars under Disney has an abysmal track record when it comes to announcing and then eventually canceling these projects. Will Lucasfilm actually deliver on their own promises this time? Here are a few of my predictions for the future of this universe. The Acolyte will be renewed for a season 2, but with some changes. Disney has no choice but to renew this disaster of a series, or they will be admitting defeat. The woke elements will be gone. This season will be condensed into 6 episodes, and it will have a budget of no more than $100 million. It's the only logical response after such a financial failure from a company who will do anything to save themselves from a PR nightmare. You heard it here first. The Mandalorian and Grogu will open to a domestic box office opening weekend of over $175 million, and then slow down with a noticeable drop-off going into the following weekends. It will have a weak performance internationally, and the box office will just creep over the $800 million mark. I predict a $200 to $250 million production budget. This will include expensive reshoots and at least a $75 million additional marketing campaign budget. Disney is going to spend a ridiculous amount of money plastering Grogu's face on everything. From billboards to macaroni noodles, you won't be able to leave the house and avoid his little green face. Even with this targeted marketing campaign, this movie will barely break even, which will defeat the purpose of rewriting Mando Season 4 for the box office instead of just releasing another season on Disney+. The parents out there will refuse to show up en masse to the theaters like they have in the past and support a company who couldn't care less about them or their kids. You just wait. Let me know down in the comments what Star Wars project you are most looking forward to in the coming years and what future Star Wars project you think will be the absolute worst. If you stayed with me this long, I want to thank you for watching. Do me a favor and leave a like on this video and subscribe to my channel. It really does wonders in reaching other frustrated parents like myself who just want good, wholesome content to share with their kids that once upon a time was shared with us. The train wreck continues on, and I couldn't look away if I tried. Stay tuned for further.